In undertaking the RECAP program, which is focused on research applicable to rural communities, access for rural communities, we came to realize that there was quite a small resource pool of specialists in this field. And this resource pool was not getting younger, and that we needed to make sure that their knowledge, either knowledge they have through work they've done themselves or knowledge they've got through working with people, this knowledge needs to be captured and retained. This knowledge covers a wide spectrum from construction of roads, the maintenance of roads, and the use of those roads for transport services. So this knowledge covers a whole continuum of actions and needs to be recorded into a total picture of what we have in terms of research done and how this research can be further applied to the good of rural communities.
My name is Francis Afukaar. I'm a civil engineer by profession, and my area of speciality or specialization is road safety, and I've worked in this area for the past 25 years, working for the National Road Safety Commission, Ghana, and then the various road agencies, i.e. Department of Urban Roads, Department of Feeder Roads, Ghana Highway Authority, and others.
I am Andreas Beusch. I'm from Switzerland. I started my career as a draftsman with an apprenticeship of 4 years. After that I made an apprenticeship as a mason and bricklayer, again 2 years, and then I did my studies as a civil engineer. After that I had my own construction company for about 2 years, and then I started to work in Africa, in Kenya, as a rural access engineer, and later on I was also involved in building up the Kisi Training Center, which is a training center for labor-based rural road construction. From 1986 onwards I became a consultant, and since then I'm working as a freelance consultant.
My name is Jasper Cook. I've got around 40 odd years experience in engineering geology and geotechnics. I started off originally as a geologist, became an engineering geologist, working on bridges, working on dam sites and access to dam sites and the materials that build them. I've gradually moved into the area of rural roads, the materials that build them, rural road networks, how they work, the appropriate technologies, appropriate specifications for rural roads. And that's where I've been working for the last 25 or so years, mainly in Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa.
Hi, I'm Tyrrell Duncan. I'm an economist and public policy specialist. I've had a career in Europe, Africa and Asia, with a strong concentration on transport. In Botswana originally through the Overseas Development Institute Fellowship Scheme, later in management consulting and consulting based in Africa. I did quite a lot of work on transport, especially for Asian Development Bank, and then eventually joined the staff and I worked there for about 20 years. Most recently, I have been closely involved with the work on preparing a global roadmap on rural access.
Okay, my name is Priyanthi Fernando. I work right now for the International Women's Rights Action Watch, Asia Pacific, based in Kuala Lumpur. But I've spent a lot of my life working on issues of gender in the technology sectors, particularly in energy and transport.
Well, I'm Tony Greening. I've been working in research nearly all my life since I did my degree. And for most of it, I worked in transport-related research. I worked for Tyrrell for almost 50 years. And And I spent over 20 years resident in African countries, and many more years undertaking research in the transport sector.
My name is Joseph Haule. I'm a transport economist by profession. Currently, I am an independent consultant in transport infrastructure, financing, management, and institutional management. I'm currently based here in Dar es Salaam.
My name is John Hine. I'm a transport economist, and I've been working mostly in the field of research and consultancy for many years, looking at the transport problems of developing countries, but particularly for rural transport and interurban transport, freight transport, passenger transport. And I've also been involved with road planning.
I'm John Howell. I've been involved in rural road development and roadside slope management for a bit over 32 years. I'm British and I'm based in Britain, but I've worked in many countries overseas, particularly in South Asia and Southeast Asia and in West Africa.
I'm Dave Jennings. I'm a civil engineer by profession. I've worked in rural development and rural access and rural roads for very many years. I first started in Africa in 1972, and I've worked in many countries in Africa, but I've also worked a little bit in Asia, in rural access and rural roads. And over the years, I became, I suppose, an expert in labour-based methods and employment-intensive methods of construction and maintenance of roads, and also became what is called a training engineer. I ran the Kisii Training Centre in Kenya, which is a training centre specifically for labour-based methods.
My name is Camilla Lema. I'm from Tanzania. I'm a transport economist, and I've worked in the field of transport for more than 30 years. In the rural transport, I've been working in this subsector for more than 25 years. And I've worked with the government. I've also worked with the donor. I've worked with the ILO Assist Program. I've also worked with the Sub-Saharan African Transport Policy Program in the World Bank, and now I'm a freelance consultant, a rural transport economist.
I'm Elifadhili Mgonja, a transport economist. I worked with National Institute of Transport in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, for 30 years. I did research in optimal utilization of vehicles, which took me almost in every part of the country. I did research in rural access and also in road safety.
My name is Mike Pinard. I'm a civil engineer and have specialized in highway engineering. Have worked in many regions of the world, but more recently in Southern Africa, in Botswana.
I'm Gina Porter. I'm a professor in the Department of Anthropology at Durham University. I started life as a geographer, but because a lot of my research is actually ethnographic in approach, then I've moved naturally towards anthropology. I've worked in sub-Saharan Africa, in particular on transport issues, since the 1970s. I didn't start as a transport person. I started my field research in northeast Nigeria, actually looking at markets and traders. But I very quickly appreciated that actually everything depended on transport.
Okay, I'm Paul Starkey. I'm a specialist in transport services and integrated transport. I've been working for 40 years in Africa, Asia, Latin America and the Pacific. I'm working with people on improving rural transport services, getting people from the villages to the markets, the towns, the hospitals, and trying to improve rural mobility and therefore better development.
So my name's Gary Taylor. I'm a civil engineer. I've worked for over 40 years. A lot of that time has been spent in rural roads construction and using labour-based methods in Africa, Asia and to a certain extent in Latin America. And my interest has been very much in the rural transport sector.
I am Trần Thị Minh Phương, the senior transport of the World Bank in Vietnam. I have been working for the rural transport development projects in Vietnam in the past 20 years. I also support the development projects in Laos PDR. I am currently managing a P4R core local road access management projects which cover 51 provinces in Vietnam. In that LRAM project, we have been piloting a lot of innovative technical assistance to support the government of Vietnam in implementing a better planning, better prioritization projects, and also doing a climate resilient rural road construction in order to improve the livelihood of the rural poor people in Vietnam.
My name is Jeff Turner. I'm a gender and transport specialist. I have over 30 years experience of doing transport research and consultancy across the developing world, particularly in Africa, and I've specialised in the interaction between transport policy and wider social development objectives such as poverty reduction, sustainable development and particularly gender and equity.